Brütal Legend is about metal, demons, and romance. So, in short, it's pretty fucking awesome. Fight through succubi, biker boars, and emo boys, perform very late-term abortions, and kiss your girlfriend all day long. It shares Borderlands' juvenile humor, satirical references, passivity towards mild profanity and gore, tough white guys, and pretty ladies. It's full of metal references and cameos.
Well, it's about fucking time!
And if you're like me and chose to sleep through 5th period of metal education, you might find yourself wholly unworthy of the game, unable to name a majority of the titans of metal, and kind of just bouncing along from one location to the next like, I don't know who this cowboy is supposed to be, but yeehaw. What it needed to share with Borderlands was their character intros. Without them, the game will just sort of fade into the annals of time as an experience increasingly more exclusive to enthusiasts of metal mythology and titans of the old millennium. The gameplay is most aptly described as confused. When the game begins, it feels like it's going to be an ARPG open-world adventure with Halo-esque driving sequences. First, you find an axe and strum some magic, and soon fight your first sub-boss. Alright, this makes sense to my brain. I've played video games before. Then, for some reason, the game evolves into a mixture of real-time strategy and action-adventure. Okay, well that was unexpected. So now I'm in an action-adventure RTS open world, with no fast travel between locations, and only repetitive activities and collectibles to complete between destinations. But I have a car. The open world as a feature is something the game can claim, but not really something that serves as story or gameplay. According to a 2015 interview with Tim Schafer on US Gamer, Brütal Legend was intended to be an RTS and forced by its publishers to be marketed as an action-adventure. The budget was blown out to expand into a single-player action-adventure and subsequently slashed, nearly dooming the company into the sea of black tears, as is the decades-long tale of Double Fine. Well then. But while I love strategy and management games, it's not really what I would have wanted from a metal parody full of Nordic mythology and fantasy themes. I understand Eddie is a roadie responsible for managing bands in their productions. The RTS element makes sense from that viewpoint, but the lore of the game and the heritage of metal already has so many RPG or even hack-and-slash elements, I'm not sure why they didn't just lean into it as a simplistic fantasy ARPG, with mechanics more along the lines of a Fable game. RTS just seems like something thematically off in the distance. When the studio got told Brütal Legend couldn't be a pure RTS, because the only major RTS games that exist flopped, like StarCraft and Command & Conquer, the RTS element got set on the back burner. When their budget got cut, the action-adventure element was left half-baked. There's no loot, no experience, no level-up system. The means to gaining new powers is uneventful. If you haven't played, you might imagine Eddie would become more powerful by learning new riffs from the metal bands around the world, or by defeating bosses, but nope. You gain powers by finding collectibles. That's it. And it leaves the player with little to no motive to give a fuck about completing the repetitive activities or enjoying the open world. But it has to be an open world, because you have a car. I could write a whole laundry list of things I wish would be an RPG-style Brütal Legend. I wish more of the combat was focused around the fun, rhythm-based magic casting. I wish there were customizable aesthetics and class-based riffs, designed after the stereotypes of heavy metal, doom metal, hair metal, etc., that would enable players to identify with their particular metal subculture. Some of my favorite parts, like in any game, are those dumb side quests that don't matter. Quests like using your mosh pit to fend off simps while some chud flirts with a girl, or delivering beer to the party on time. Those utterly pointless activities enabled Brütal Legend to fit effortlessly in the same vein as other parts of metal subculture, like Metalocalypse and Tenacious D. and it helps that Eddie is Jack Black, god of rock, supreme warrior of this pernicious berm, PewDiePie's arch nemesis, Jack motherfucking Black. But then you realize that every activity is just a reskin of the last, which is not what every side quest in your game should be. I find that in open worlds, it is the exploration to discover fun and interesting situations that give the game the majority of its personality. Brütal Land has its own fantastical creation myth. An ancient being named Ophelia sang to the nourishing tree Madronal, which in turn provided sustenance to the first creatures, who then captured her. They forced her to use her song to lure Omegodon, an ancient omnipotent fire god, to the ground where they would try to douse his flames, but rather than be extinguished, he let out a vigorous scream that caused him to explode. His fire rose and became the sun. His blood flooded the world and became the oceans, and shards of metal of his body became the ore in the earth. His scream echoed through the world throughout time and was discovered by the Titans. The lore is an ode to the Nordic origins and inspiration that metal is so often derived from and aspires to, sometimes problematically, and sets this beautiful foundation for a fantasy RPG. Outside of this crazy mythology is a cheesy narrative with the twisting complexity of a Saturday morning cartoon. And the big bad is Doviculus, who has a scarcity of Voldemort without the fear-mongering illusion of omnipresence, and who looks like he wants you in a sadomasochist dungeon, where those weird stitches will definitely be part of the kink. I enjoy a good cheesy story, which I recognize as a bit of an oxymoron, but it was too obvious. Climb a ladder of villains who are easily defeated through RTS elements and boss fights that don't matter. The biggest disappointment to me was how Ophelia goes from being an absolute badass to the damsel in distress, leaving her doppelganger to take the mantle. Drowned Ophelia is definitely rad, but it was disappointing to have the only meaningful representation of a female metalhead out of the narrative for a majority of the game, leaving us with Lita, who suffers from the permanent debuff, annoying. I sort of wish we had just had a game about a happy couple who fights things together. Brütal Legend 2, maybe? For people who identify with metal subcultures and other related subcultures, it's a lingering feeling like there's infrequently meaningful representation of your interests. Games like Brütal Legend and Sunset Overdrive from developers with vision, like Double Fine and Insomniac, offer the rare opportunity to enjoy a subculture-based experience, or even an unusual experience where the themes get mishmashed, like Sunset's weird zombie apocalypse skater third-person shooter open-world platformer. It's not every day that you get to enjoy fake playing guitar and fighting demons in one game. I even discovered a few songs I loved, like Ozzy's Believer and Mirror Throne's So Frail. Alright, well, that's all I can share without being copyright strike. So, as far as this experience goes, I'd say it was probably worth like 897 experience points. I'd like to end this with a message to Tim Schafer. Please make Brütal Legend 2. Everyone knows that game publishers can be more risk-averse than a paranoid actuary, so just make a Kickstarter, dude. I'll put $897 into it if I have the money. Wait, you know what? No, I'm not giving you any money. You have Microsoft money now. Just make the game. You need your axe. Check. Rocks. Check. Laser beams. Check. Location. Check. Hatred. Check. Desire. Check. Vengeance. Check. Murder. Check.